Okay, something major just went down in West Africa. The nation of Mali has been absolutely rocked by a huge, coordinated military offensive. So today we're going to dig into the intelligence and figure out how a brand new insurgent alliance managed to bring an entire country right to the edge of collapse.
Right, so everything we're looking at here is based on the situation as it stood on April 25th, 2026. You really have to lock that date in your mind because it marks a massive turning point in this conflict, and it's the absolute focus of our analysis. So, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll get a quick overview of the situation. Then, we'll dive into the offensive itself, look at why Mali's security strategy failed, and check out its shaky regional alliances. And finally, we'll bring it all together to see what this really means moving forward.
So, what exactly happened on April 25th? Well, Mali got hit by this wave of attacks that was just totally unprecedented. And we're not talking about one isolated incident. No, this was a sophisticated, countrywide operation that was aimed right at the heart of the state's entire security system.
You know, to really understand how things could spiral this fast, our analysis is going to focus on three key failures. First, a serious underestimation of a new insurgent alliance. Second, the massive strategic miscalculation of turning to Russia for security. And third, the weakness of this new regional pact that was supposed to keep things stable.
The success of this whole offensive really hinges on our first key point, a powerful and honestly pretty unexpected collaboration. This was not just one group acting alone. We're talking multiple insurgent forces coordinating their moves with just devastating precision. At the center of it all is what we're calling a de facto alliance. It's this tactical team-up between two very different groups, the al-Qaeda-affiliated Jihadists, JNIM, and the Tuareg Separatists from the FLA. Now, they're not formal allies, but their coordination on the ground let them attack on multiple fronts at the exact same time, stretching Mali's security forces way past their breaking point.
And the scale of this operation is just staggering. Look at these targets. They were anything but random. They hit the international airport and the main military base in the capital, Bamako. That's the junta's headquarters. They even blew up the defense minister's home. And at the same time, major military posts in key cities all across the country, Gao, Salvare, Mopti, Kidal, they all came under attack. It just shows an incredible level of planning and ambition.
And we have direct proof from the attackers themselves. What you're looking at here is the actual message sent out by the jihadist group JNIM. In it, they take full responsibility for hitting the junta's HQ, the defense minister's house, and the airport in Bamako. They also claim they've taken control of the cities of Mopti, Savare, and Gao, and they're openly bragging about their partnership with the Separatists. This image from the strategic northern city of Kidal, it really shows you the reality on the ground. You can clearly see the insurgent flags of the FLA and JNIM flying right in the city center. And meanwhile, the Malian armed forces, the FAMA, and their Russian allies, they're trapped, totally isolated in their military base. They're effectively cut off. This wasn't just a hit and run. This was a complete seizure of territory. Which brings us to our second big point, and a huge question. How could the government's defenses just crumble so quickly? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle lies in the Malian junta's big pivot to a new security partner, a strategy that has, to put it mildly, backfired spectacularly.
So let's just compare the two approaches. The old strategy involved Western partners and UN peacekeepers, and it was focused pretty broadly on stabilizing the country. The new strategy, it relies on Russia's Africa Corps, which is basically the new name for the Wagner Group, and it's been laser-focused on one thing, keeping the regime in power. And the result? Instead of stability, we've seen a massive spike in violence and a state that's way more vulnerable than it's ever been.
The signs of this failure are just undeniable. I mean, insurgents made it all the way to the capital. The defense minister's home was destroyed. Russian forces were dragged into a firefight at Bamako's airport, literally defending the regime's lifeline to the outside world. And maybe the most telling detail of all, there are reports that Russia is asking for safe passage just to get its own troops out of that base in Kidal. Every single one of these points to the same thing. The strategy has completely failed.
And that failure extends to our third point, regional security. See, Mali isn't operating in a vacuum here. It just created a brand new regional military alliance. But when the crisis actually hit, that alliance turned out to be a total paper tiger.
This new pact is called the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES for short. It was put together by the military juntas in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger right after they basically isolated themselves by leaving the big West African Economic Group, ECOWAS. This was supposed to be their new pillar of regional security.
And you have to see this timeline, because the timing is just incredible. Just days, literally days before this massive offensive kicked off, what were the leaders of the AS focused on? Launching a new joint airline. It was a symbolic project, right? Meant to show off their sovereignty and cooperation. But on April 25th, all that symbolism got shattered by the harsh reality that the alliance was completely useless when it came to preventing a catastrophic security collapse in one of its own member states.
And now tensions are really starting to flare. This is a direct quote from the spokesperson for the Separatist FLA. They are explicitly warning Mali's AES allies, Burkina Faso and Niger, to stay out of the fight. And let's be clear, this isn't just a warning. It's a threat that this conflict could easily spill over the borders and ignite a much wider regional war.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. What is the actual big picture here? And where is this all headed?
When we map out all the different forces at play, the situation becomes crystal clear. The factors pushing towards escalation are powerful. You've got the successful insurgent alliance, the failed Russian security model, and this toothless regional pact. And then we look for stabilizing factors, for anything pushing back against this collapse, and we find nothing. Absolutely nothing in the current environment.
All of this analysis forces us to ask the one big question. With its capital under attack, its security strategy in absolute tatters, and its alliances proving totally useless, is the Malian state itself on the verge of a complete and total collapse?
Our final assessment, based on all the evidence we've just walked through, is pretty much unavoidable. Mali is facing an escalating risk of total state failure. And as we've seen, this is not a crisis that's going to stay neatly within its borders. It has the grave potential for profound regional destabilization, the kind that creates power vacuums, fuels massive humanitarian crises, and carves out safe havens for extremist groups that have global ambitions. The question really isn't if the region will be impacted anymore, it's just a matter of how badly.